I should add for all of those who don't know me, I know some of you, but not all of you, my name is Lori, and I'm the CEO of Rise. And it's really an enormous pleasure to welcome so many of our female entrepreneurs tonight. This is our first ever actual Zoom event, so it's a bit of a learning process, but we're really excited, and we hope we can do more of this kind of thing in the future. I have the unenviable task of introducing Michele. I think that in the short time I've got, I will barely be able to do it justice. Michele I've seen many things written about Michele where she is a self-defined serial entrepreneur who started 5 businesses before her 33rd birthday. And if you just think about that for a minute, that's quite insane. 5 businesses before her 33rd birthday. Michele launched her first business in 2006 when she was a student at Queen's, which was a coffee shop. And most recently, Michele and a business partner launched a new venture, a few months ago to source PPE for the pandemic. And in a recent Globe article, I noted that Michele said the new business is one of the fastest growing companies that she'd ever dealt with. So that's incredibly interesting. Some of you may know Michele from CBC's Dragon Den, which she joined in 2015 as the youngest entrepreneur to be a dragon. And among her many other awards and honors, Michele was recently named as one of the Fortune magazine's 2020 picks for top 40 under 40. So by anyone's standards, Michele Romanow is a huge success story. But what I find interesting is that she's often quoted as saying that the most successful people also fail the most, that's how you learn. So I'm really delighted that Michele agreed to be with us tonight briefly to help all of us learn a little bit. I understand that Michele has a keen interest in female entrepreneurship, and so I'm sure that we'll all benefit from her insight and experience. And now it's also my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator, Nesh Pillay. Nesh, maybe give a wave. Nesh is a Rise client and owner of Press Pillay, which is a PR firm that focuses on content, social media, management, and branding. Nesh worked in New York for quite a while before she started her own company. And I'm really delighted that Nesh has done actually a number of events for us before. And she actually has a starring role in our brand video, which lives on our website. So if you want to see Nesh in action more, you should check out the video on our website. So that's it. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nesh, who will expertly moderate and facilitate this conversation. I think you'll see people come in to the meeting partway through, so we'll have some flexibility there. And I look forward to chatting with you again at the end. So yeah, over to Nesh.
Thank you, Lori.
Great to meet you, Nesh.
Oh, hi. I think you're playing fast and loose with the term expert moderation, but I can ask some questions. So thank you, everyone. It's really, really great to be here. Just a quick idea, just kind of getting into how we're going to do this. I'll ask some questions. So a lot of you, when you registered, you asked some questions. We picked a few to ask Michele today. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to add them to the chat. And at the end, we'll try to get to as many as we can. And we're a little bit lower on time, so I kind of just want to jump in. So Michele, like since COVID has happened, a lot of businesses have had to pivot very, very quickly. We know a lot of businesses that were traditionally brick and mortar jumped online. And what my question for you, so we know you just started a new business, and so this is actually going to be retroactive, but in starting a new business, like what did you do differently as opposed to what you would have done before? And then the second question is, if someone on this team was looking to open a business right now, in these uncertain times, what would you recommend?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so I think, look, as soon as times get uncertain, it's very, very easy to become scared, right? Like that's our natural, unless like everyone else. I mean, the first month of COVID, I think I only had dreams about being in hospitals with ventilators and like the world falling apart. And like, that's a really normal reaction to, you know, compression or recessionary or scary times. I think the better way to think about this, and it's like helpful when you read history, is like, these are the times you get mass acceleration of new industries because everything was just flipped on its head. And so I'll give you some examples of things that, I mean, even something as simple as like, you know, these QR codes, like, man, they've been around for 10 fucking years and no one's used them and they never really worked and like, it didn't really make any sense. And now it's every menu's on a QR code and it's like, everyone has massively adopted this technology. And so that's like a tiny example of like a feature. But, you know, we've also seen huge new rises to, you know, entrepreneurship is up. Everyone is looking at starting a business now that employment is lower. E-commerce has surged through the roof. We are 10 years ahead of online sales where we thought we would be in 2020. So from the beginning of COVID to the end, I mean, we went from, as a percentage of US retail sales, e-commerce went from 14% to 28% overnight. We actually thought that was going to take 30 years. You can think about setting yourself up as an online business today. That's a huge advantage going forward. And it doesn't matter if you have like a local, you know, shoe store or a local business, like having that online presence is enormous today. And then categories like telemedicine. I mean, why were we going to our doctors to describe things that really didn't need to be checked out, right? Like it's pretty easy for me to take a picture of a rash. It's pretty easy for me to ask for a routine prescription. And telemedicine was another thing that we saw drastically increase during this. And so I think a couple of things. Most importantly, in the back of your mind, continue, even though everyone's businesses, I mean, we saw this on the Dragon's Den this year, like everyone's businesses, I mean, events businesses, anything that had anything to do with in person, like restaurants, all of that was completely flipped on its head. And it's really easy. Gyms, like there's so, I can give you countless examples of, you know, being scared. But I think if you can translate that into like, okay, well, the world just changed what they needed. We did a whole 180, which means there's a brand new set of opportunities there. And really looking at this from the opportunity standpoint versus the disadvantage standpoint, you will continue to find those opportunities. And so I think, you know, my advice to the founders here is to view this as an opportunity to look at the fact that there's going to be mass adoption of a few new things now. You know, I never imagined I would be in medical supplies and PPE, and what genuinely started off as a complete charity initiative was just after we brought in like, I don't know, $5 million worth, we're like, this is actually a real company, and we've figured out some real problems in the supply chain, and so kept going.
That's really great. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I've had a lot of fun watching. So, you know, for so many years now, conversations in every industry have been future of educate, you know, future of education, future of work, future of whatever. I think that there's been a lot of hesitance to actually embrace that. Whereas, you know, because we can't because of this reason or this reason, we can't work remotely because of this reason. And overnight it was, well, now you're going to, and it's really pushed a lot of people. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It was the catalyst for so many things. And there's, look, I'm like every other human. There's a part of this that I deeply don't like, right? I don't like not seeing friends. I don't like not running into people. Like I'm an extrovert, like a 99% extrovert. I don't like not seeing people in the office, but it's pushed me to realize that, like, yeah, there's a lot of things in remote work that we weren't doing that we should have been doing. And all of that really did matter.
Yeah, it definitely forces us to reevaluate how we connect as people using the technological tools that we have. Okay, as much as I could talk about this one all night, so I'm going to move forward. This is kind of a two-parter. So number one, it's topical, right? Diversity is really important. There's pushes for that publicly. I know internally a lot of companies are doing that. And then the second piece is when you are a woman in certain roles, especially when you're a female entrepreneur, it can be isolating. Two questions for you. The first would be, tell us a little bit about how you, I don't want to say overcame barriers, but I would say that being a female entrepreneur, there are often moments when you're the female in the room. I know you've been in fintech, so that the only female in the room. So how do you kind of those situations? Yeah, exactly. And then my second question is, what needs to change on a mass level in society so that we're properly paving the way for female entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs of color, or really anyone from any of these groups?
Yeah. So I actually really liked, Nesh, how you paired this up into two questions, because that's actually how I think your mind frame should be around these two questions. And this is really hard because people convolute these issues all the time. There is mentally how you, with whatever cards you dealt, respond to the world. That's the first thing, is your mindset in dealing with that. And then the second thing is, okay, how do I solve some of these societal problems that have existed for a very, very, very long time? And so dividing those two things up is extremely important. So let me talk about the mindset. So the first thing, and I genuinely believe this from the bottom of my heart, I have never viewed being a woman as a disadvantage. And just like digest that and like take that in for a second. I have never once thought it was a disadvantage. And I think that is a huge part of my mindset. I see it as a huge advantage. I come at a problem with a different set of perspective, with a different set of shared experiences. And then there's other things that people don't talk about. Like, everyone remembers me because I am usually the only woman there. And that's been the case my whole entire career. I was in engineering, I was in an MBA program, I was a founder, I, have been in industry, like, yeah, finance doesn't have a lot of women, like all, and I was just never, I knew that it was a huge advantage that people remembered my name. Like, it's very hard to stand out when your name is Andrew and you're one of the 8 white Andrews. I love it. I'm dating an Andrew, so I can make the joke about Andrews. But it's very different. And then the second thing that I believe is such a critical advantage, which people talk about this in the opposite way, and I always find it bizarre, is that I think one of the most powerful things in the world is I am consistently underestimated. So people are like, oh, that's so annoying and no one believes she can do it, and people confuse me for the EA. And like, certainly that's happened, and certainly I've had lots of, rough experiences. But I'm like, Michele, think about the opposite to being underestimated. And the opposite to being underestimated is being overestimated. And then imagine your life is Elon Musk. Like, just imagine. You're just a guy trying to like build new shit. But at the end of the day, like, Elon Musk is going to put a person on Mars and people are going to be like, not impressive. That should be your Wednesday. Oh my God, that's a huge thing. It must be unbelievably stressful to just deal with the basic expectations that a leader like that may have. And so I think about it being a huge advantage that I'm underestimated. I think about it being a huge advantage that I stand out. I think about it being a huge advantage. And then I don't spend time looking for these things. Like, yeah, lots of things happen and I don't know why it happened. Like, I started my career and I was 20 years old. I started this little tea room, and, lots of people didn't listen to me. I needed to raise $100,000 for this little coffee shop, and I was begging the university for money and going to business plan competitions and doing all these things. And I knew that some people weren't taking me seriously, but I had no idea if it was because I was 20 years old, because I was a woman, or because they didn't know what I was talking about. Keep in mind, all 3 of these things are true. I really don't know. And so every time I had that experience, I was like, well, that sucks. And now I'm going to move on. And I just mentally keep, like, when I fundraise, I'm like, I'm going to have to talk to 100 people. 90 of these people are going to say no. 10 are going to be interested. I'm going to get 3 term sheets. And so when this failure slaps you in the face, I'm not crediting, I don't know, like a woman or different. I'm just like, Michele, the only thing I can control is my output. The only thing I can do is more meetings. And the only thing I can do is be more innovative. So that's, I think, the first part of your question is, how do I deal with this personally? And I'm a really big advocate of, thinking about my advantages versus my disadvantages. And then the second part of this question is, what do we do as society? The other thing that I give myself a lot is, you know, I talked a little bit earlier about how some of these issues have been structural for many, many, many years. And I think about how powerful that is. You know, if I was, like, I think about my grandmother, who probably had very similar genes to me and was super ambitious. Like, I was born with these very competitive genes, and I really liked to work. And like, her options in life were like school teacher or secretary. Like, I can tell you, I would have been a terrible school teacher. Like, my patience with children is very low. My patience with adults is sometimes low. Like, God bless people that teach children. And like, secretary, I would have just gone crazy. Like, my boss I would have been fired from every job I had. And so I think about even the type of progress we made and how much progress. And then I'm like, okay, Michelle, you got to keep going. And you got to keep building examples, and you got to keep building, you know, big companies. Structurally, what do we do? Okay, structurally, there are lots of problems. And structurally, there are problems with how founders get access to capital. There are structural problems about, you know, all sorts of things. And then as a society, those are much, much, much bigger things. And so governments, I think, are doing a lot of work right now on how do we make things, you know, different from that perspective. You know, solving a lot of this stuff around universal childcare is a big thing. I know at Clearbanc, we have the policy that like we give women or men the same amount of time off, because we're basically saying like either one of you can be a parent. That's a huge part of it. You know, Clearbanc, I think, is a big part of the solution on female funding, because, you know, we've given over $1 billion to 3,000 different e-commerce companies in the last year and a half. And we did that by just using the data behind these businesses. So we actually don't take a face-to-face meeting. We're not evaluating management teams. And as a result of doing that, we're not seeing the same bias we've seen in these investment decisions. So we backed 8 times more women than the venture capital industry average. And so it's this combination of new models, which I'm like personally working very hard on. It's, you know, government support. It's like, how do we think about childcare? And then it's cultural, right? I think sometimes people want to be like, this isn't fast enough when we aren't moving fast enough. And I think about the fact that like generationally, we have made a big shift. And that should give me a lot of reason to be optimistic versus pessimistic. I think COVID is going to be a because there's been so much more childcare that's fallen in during this time, and we're going to have to think about how do we solve some of those challenges. I also think it normalizes parenting in a totally different way. Like, you know, Laura, you said at the beginning, like, I would love to meet some of your kids if they want to wave to us on the call. Like, that's a part of life that we should be a part of. And sharing, you know, people's families and their dogs in their living room, and the fact that I'm, you know, in a different place now, I think that's actually okay. That makes us more human. That makes us connect with people in an even deeper way. But I don't know, does that answer your question? It's a very long answer to a very complicated question. So I'm trying to distill a lot of it.
No, that was really great. The piece about having your kid around. So I have a 4-year-old, and at the beginning of COVID, I used to be very much of the mindset where there's weirdly a little bit of shame, especially when you're a professional female entrepreneur. You feel like equality means you pretend like you're a man without a child, or you pretend like you're a white man. But my 4-year-old had different ideas, so she was like jumping on me during Zoom meetings, or like trying to look down my shirt, and I eventually just had to roll with it. I mean, the world had different plans.
I think so, and I think that that humanizes us, and it's a part of our life, and it is so important to bring those people in. I mean, my head of marketing has 2 twin daughters, and I think 90% of our calls, one of them is howling about something, and now it's just like everyone knows, and it's just like, but it's part, and I think then that also reframes people's minds that mothers especially can be incredible entrepreneurs and incredible contributors in organizations, and that's a part of their life, and just like so is work is a part of their life.
100%. It forces us to reevaluate what real life looks like. What I'm going to do is jump ahead a little bit for now and actually have Katie, who's in Lucan, Ontario. Lucin. This is embarrassing that I don't know how to pronounce it. So she owns Cloud9 Kids. It's a kids resale boutique offering gently used clothing. Really good idea.
Awesome.
Yeah, and her business has just celebrated its first year, and she's already
Congrats.
opening her physical location. And she feels like she needs to hire her first employee, but she, at this point, does everything. So she manages the physical store, online sales, social, just everything. Um, she has such a clear vision of how she wants her work done, but I think there are challenges around handing that off to someone. So, Katie, if you could hop on and ask Michelle your question.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
It's wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So you kind of summed up my question. It's kind of terrifying and exciting at the same time, the thought of bringing someone into my team, the team that is just me right now. So I'm wondering if you can share your wisdom on building a team and learning to let go of kind of that grip, the control I have over everything right now.
Yeah. So the first thing is you're going to have to accept is that even the best employee in the world will only do things 80% as well as you will, because no one is going to care. No one is going to, and they're just going to be like stylistic differences, and you got to be okay. And so first of all, if you're at 65%, that's not good. You need another employee, but you have to be okay with letting go a little bit and understanding that fundamentally you cannot scale yourself. That is probably the biggest piece of advice. Like I do this still all the time where I'm like, oh, I'll just work harder, I'll just do this. But like, Michelle, you are not clonable and you are not scalable. And so bringing those people in. The second part of taking the jump around employees is that we talk about salaries as annual salaries. And so it's really easy to get scared because you're like, oh, I'm hiring a $50,000 salary. That's a $50,000 investment. And you're like, no, that's actually a $4,500 investment. Because if this person isn't productive in the first month, I've only paid them for a month, right? And getting really good about, you can do lots of research and lots of interviews and Google a ton of research if you want to read on this. But interviews only give you so much information. You still get most of the information no matter what interview technique you get when someone's working with you. And so part of being, a founder and a boss is setting clear expectations, giving really clear feedback, and then, keeping people super engaged and motivated and promoted, or then exiting them, because bad employees can kill your business much faster than almost anything else can. And it's just part of the reality of that, is that sometimes you just don't get it right. So I hope you do. I hope you do get a first good employee. It will be game changing for you. You have no idea what happens when you double and then you triple. And so I'm very excited for you. But also be okay with, it's hard for people to give feedback. And I always remember that it's much meaner. The meanest thing you can do to an employee is one day walk into the office and say, this isn't working out and you have to leave. Like, getting fired should never be a surprise for anyone. So as long as you're giving people consistent feedback along the way, it actually is beneficial. I've had lots of employees that have exited from me because they're like, okay, we understand that this just isn't fit. And you're not being nice if you're not telling the truth in that way. So that would be my advice on first employees. But great question.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm jumping between documents, and so that's what that delay is. It's nothing other than human error. I really appreciate that. That's a helpful one. That's something that I've faced a bit in the past, and when it comes to hiring, managing has become a thing that I've had to teach myself, because I've never wanted to be a corporate person, so I didn't think I'd have to teach myself management. But I've taken different approaches of, my first employee, I was like hyper focused on everything, and then I took a laissez-faire approach, and then lost our largest ever client. And so it just, finding that balance is always tough.
Totally. And you got to live and learn through some of those, for sure. I've definitely had that. Even in our own company, we're 300 people, and we go through phases where Andrew and I are taking more ownership and less ownership, and it's one of those things that's a constant kind of ebb and flow.
Yeah, and it's tough because you want to have a life as well outside of it, but then you feel super guilty.
Yeah.
So on that note, though, can you talk to me a little bit about some of the critical decisions that you've had to make along the way when scaling your business, and what sort of informs those decisions for you?
Oh my God, there's so many decisions. Let's think about decision making in this way. Most decisions are actually, like, divide decisions into two buckets: reversible decisions and irreversible decisions. And when you're small, there's less impact because it's easier for you to change your mind. And so there are actually, when you think about it, there's very few irreversible decisions in life. An irreversible decision is like having a baby. Like, you can and can't give it back after you've had it.
Fight it.
But
they don't allow,
they don't have a refund policy. But I would actually say like 90% of the work decisions you make are pretty reversible. So if you make a decision, if you go into the wrong market, if you hire the wrong person, if you launch the wrong product, you can actually reverse that and retreat. And then I would think about, if you have to make reversible decisions, making them really quickly and seeing what the market says, and irreversible decisions, taking a lot of time to really think about those. And this is a framework I got from Jeff Bezos. I think it's amazing because, especially at the early stage, it's much better to make decisions quicker and then just change your mind if things aren't working. And tell people that, look, this is a startup, we're going to change your mind a bunch, set them up for that. It's now, I mean, we really live by that ethos at Clearbanc. It's definitely, I'm not going to lie, it's a little more painful at 300 people when you're constantly telling people that things don't work and you got to change it. But it's actually what makes you super innovative, is that you can move very, very quickly. And so that's how I would think about kind of the decision-making piece.
Yeah, that's a big one. I know that when it comes to some of those big questions though, because your business is your baby in a lot of ways. And so your own ego is very much wrapped up in that. So you have an idea that you think is like the best thing.
Yeah.
And you have to run back on that after 2 or 3 months. It hurts.
Totally. And it's like, companies are babies, but they're not. You need to like separate yourself a little bit more. It's easy to get very emotional. It's easy to be like, this is my life's work. But it makes you a better founder to separate a little bit and be like, this is what the business is now versus this is what I can give it.
Was there a point for you in your career where you realized, like, after which business or at which point did you take a step back and go like, oh fuck, I need to separate a little bit?
It's really like, you get with your for so long, and then finally you're like, this isn't working, I gotta change. I mean, Clearbanc went through 3 business models before we got our current one. Like, this is the part about being an entrepreneur where it's like 80% of the thing what I do for my life. Like, imagine you went to like your tax accountant and they'd be like, I'll file your taxes, they'll be wrong 80% of the time. Like, that is the career you're in as a founder. Lots of things won't work. And so it's pushing through, it's continuing to try things. And then the good part is when you get a win in this space, the win can be so big, it can carry you for a long time. And so, I've had lots of dark days. I've had lots of dark months and dark periods where things didn't feel like they were going to work. They were exceptionally hard. I mean, I remember during the Bitopia days, one winter, I got whooping cough. This is a little known fact, but you get a whooping cough vaccine, it actually wears off after 10 years. So I don't know how I got whooping cough, but I got whooping cough. This is maybe 7 years ago. And you cough, it's known as a 90-day cough. You cough every day for 90 days. And the company was in such a fragile place. I had to come in every day. Like, I knew if I would leave that I would, I knew if I would leave, like, the company would fall apart. And so it was just like every day I went to the office for these 90 days. It was like, it was miserable.
That's rough, man. It's weird though. You kind of love it, you love it. Like, that's the only way I can describe entrepreneurship. I want to jump back really quickly to ask another Rise member if she would come forth with her question. So this is Jennifer. She owns Jenny Bites in Ottawa. And what it is chain couture fashion jewelry with a fetish twist that blurs the lines between clothing, lingerie, and jewelry. I'm gonna have to check this out, Jenny. I'm fascinated.
Cool.
Yeah, they're meant to empower women and femininity. And she started the business by accident 4 years ago when she had to stop working because of health issues. She says that the pandemic has had a huge impact on because her business very much depended on human interaction, community building, and she's having a tough time moving things online. So Jennifer, if you could ask your question, please.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
Hi.
All right. Well, basically, I'd like to know, like, I have my website, and then in June, I decided to open an Etsy shop as well.
Yep.
But I'm not getting like constant sales. So I need to find a way to get people to come to the website and, you know, at least make a purchase every other time. How do you get them to buy more often?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And it's some of your jewelry in your background.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I
It's
got
very cool.
like a
Um,
face mask over here. So I don't know if you see it.
yeah, it's very cool. So what you need is you need to start investing in trying digital ads because the internet's a very big place and people don't find you unless you advertise. And then you have to figure out if you can do that with profitable unit economics. So that means can you spend, you know, $5 and get a $20 sale, right? Can you make money on every transaction? And the good news right now is that generally like Facebook and Google ad prices are down because all of the companies that did travel and events stopped advertising on those platforms. And you can start testing with, you know, budgets of like $100, $200, $300, right? Um, but that's really, and then, so you want to work on a couple of things. You want to work on making sure that the traffic that is getting there is converting. And so figuring out why or why not, are you out of stock? Do people want different colors or different sizes? Like all of that can kind of help you understand why people aren't converting if they get there. You then want to be increasing your traffic. So that's starting to invest in looking at if digital ads can work for your business. And then the third thing is you want to spend a lot of time thinking about retention and repeat customers because once people have bought from you and have a good experience, they're the cheapest customer to come back. So having, you know, a referral program, having a mailer, um, you know, send like creative postcards. I mean, you can do all sorts of things to re-engage your current customers, but that's how I would think about increasing your online traffic.
Okay, so like you basically like give a referral program to existing customers, giving them maybe a discount if they refer somebody so that they buy again and they get somebody else to buy too. Yeah, that could work. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, try that. Try Facebook ads.
Oops, you kind of froze out.
Your metrics to see if you can
I don't know, you froze out, I didn't hear you.
freeze out.
Yeah,
Sorry. So yeah, that's okay. So trying digital ads.
you're freezing out again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hopefully it stays.
Okay. So trying digital ads, number one.
Yeah,
Trying, you know, referral programs and doing things for your repeat customers, and then
yeah,
trying to figure out.
it froze out again.
I just tried to switch my Wi-Fi. Let me know if this is better.
Okay, so I heard the first two. I don't know what you said after.
Sorry, the three things I said were testing out digital ads for your business, testing if you can increase repeat customers through reaching out to them, email programs and referral programs. And the third thing is looking at your website and trying to figure out what in your metrics is maybe not drawing people to convert at that time.
Okay, so just keep a closer eye on all of that.
Totally.
All right. Cool.
So
Yeah, because I was going to bring it to the fashion runways. My thing was to bring it to the fashion shows and everything. Then that just, like, the plug got pulled 2 weeks before.
Totally. Well, no,
And I'm like,
we're all
man,
having good. I mean, fashion shows are going to be completely different.
yeah,
You know, depends on your price point of your product. You know, lots of jewelry designers have done very well sending stylist products and getting their products on celebrities and influencers. You can do that. You can do a program like that. I mean, there's lots of things you can try to try and increase.
yeah, because the thing is to get it onto celebrities.
Yeah, I mean, that's worked for some people. It depends on like the price point of your products and if you can ship product for free. But often that's worked pretty well for some folks.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks, Michelle. So this is kind of a fun one. I don't know if anyone else does this, but as entrepreneurs, we always have ideas, right? Like everything that comes across my path, the first thing is, how am I going to turn this into a business? Where's the money in this? And I have a crazy notebook at the side of my bed where I just write my ideas that come to me in the middle of the night. So this is a very entrepreneurial thing. When you have these ideas for new businesses, services, whatever it may be, what is the filter in your brain to separate something that's valuable from something that might just be nonsense ramblings?
Oh yeah, no, it's really good. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time brainstorming to this day. I mean, me and my friends and my partners all play the game like, what's the next $1 million idea? We're constantly talking about how business is changing and evolving. Um, and when you think you're onto something, the most important thing is to try and test something really quickly. So now it's very easy to test ideas. It's, really inexpensive to get your iPhone and, film a little video and see if you can launch a Kickstarter, see if you can launch a website, and then test to see if there's customer demand for your product. And that tells you a lot. So what I try and do is like quickly understand the industry, do some quick research around, competitiveness and where I would sit in the market, and then immediately look towards testing. Most entrepreneurs spend way too much time researching and writing business plans and not actually getting out to the market and testing. And that would always be my bias, is trying to move as quickly as you can into test phase.
And so at what point are you trying to figure out exactly who your audience is, or are you just constantly evolving that?
I mean, you're taking your best guess, right? You're going out there and like you have some ideas, and then you're seeing if that, like, I really don't like market research. I don't like the idea of asking people what they like, because I think you get all of these biases. Like, okay, let's play a game. Who wanted to work out this morning? Put up your hand. I wanted to work out this morning. And then like, who actually worked out this morning? There's going to be like 2 hands left over. Oh, Lori, man, the Rise women, they're like all on it. But this is what happens.
But I didn't want to.
But you didn't want to. I mean, sorry. And maybe want is the wrong word. It's like, who made the plan to do this versus who did this? I think what I'm trying to say in market research is that people always give their best aspirational versions of themselves. And ultimately that isn't buying behavior. Buying behavior is very, very different, which is why crowdfunding is so powerful, because people actually have to put their credit card into your website knowing that your product may or may not ship. And so I'm a big fan of thinking about testing in that way.
Awesome, thank you. Also, I can't remember if I said it or not, but that question came in from Jesse. So Jesse, thank you for that question. Okay, my next question. So you see pitches all the time. You've pitched a ton, and I'm sure you've seen great ones and some hilarious or not so great ones. What's the difference between a good pitch and a bad pitch? And if there were like 3 things that you would want someone to carry away from this scenario or this conversation, especially when talking to investors, what are those 3?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is like practice makes perfect. I cannot tell you how much work I do on my pitches before I give them. And even I think about the first like 5-10 pitches I do in a typical fundraising process, they're kind of like throwaway pitches. Like, they're just not going to be great because, and I practice a lot. I mean, even when I was like in business plan competitions, you practice objection handling. So you practice like, hey, what if they say this? And what if they say this? And what if they say I don't like your market? And what do you say? What are your competitors? And I really try and pitch with one other person. So if you have a co-founder or someone on your team you can pitch with, that makes a huge difference, because one person talks and the other person reads faces. And you're looking for if lines are landing with people. Like, you're really looking to be like, did that person understand what I said? Did that example make sense? Did that analogy made sense? And then telling a successful story. And so I start all of my pitches. I don't expect anyone to know who I am. I mean, some people think I'm a celebrity. Most people still don't know who I am. So I always tell them like why they should be taking me seriously in the first 2 minutes of a pitch. So I tell my story and my co-founder's story, and then tell them why the business really matters to us and why we're the only people that are going to uniquely execute on this. And then I try and make them understand the product really quickly. When you leave it too long for people to understand your product, people get very confused and they kind of glaze over. So again, the first thing would be like practice. And then that really includes knowing your numbers inside and out. The number one problem on Dragon's Den is people don't know their numbers and they don't know how to talk through their numbers. And then it's very hard for an investor to take you seriously because it's their money you're asking for. The second thing is telling a really compelling story. So making sure you're answering this question of why you are the only one to be able to execute on this business. And probably the third thing is like, I mean, you're going to have to pitch a lot, and lots of people will tell you that a business is going to fail, and that's just a part of the pitching journey. And so remembering that one bad pitch is actually just that. It's one bad pitch. It doesn't mean you should stop. It doesn't mean you should fail. It might mean there's some good feedback. It might mean there's some shitty feedback that you shouldn't take. But also remembering that it's just a pitch, and it's not the end of the world when you have a bad pitch.
So 2 things off that. The first is, what's like too theatrical for a pitch? And then the second, let's start with that one actually.
I would generally, like, at the risk of being ridiculous, like, I don't think anything's too theatrical for a pitch. I mean, when we had an app, I had my iPhone on me all the time. I could do a product demo in real time with someone, I don't know, in a bathroom, on an airplane. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, Dragon's Den, nothing's too theatrical. I think if for a business meeting, I mean, you got to kind of think about who your audience is. But yeah, that's kind of how I would think about that.
Okay, great. And I had a second question, but I do not remember what it is. So we'll move on. Okay, so I would like to see, my next question is actually from Riti, who is the owner of Tiny Paw Cafe.
Yep.
It's a responsible e-commerce pet brand. I actually love pet tech right now.
Yeah.
And they're dedicated to making non-toxic toys for pets. The pet industry does not have regulations around manufacturing, and Riti's business aims to change that by being transparent about the process and practice of social and environmental responsibility. They're entirely fair trade and no plastic. They don't use any plastic at all, so they reduce
That's cool.
the footprint. But in the next 6 months or so, she's expecting to experience some challenges when it comes to capital investments. And so she is curious about Clearbanc specifically and what your minimums are in terms of revenue required in order to support a business.
Yeah. Just wait to me if you ask the question, so I know who you are. Or what was the name again?
Riti, R-I-T-I.
Riti, okay. So on Clearbanc, well, now we just launched a product where we can start funding companies that are pretty early stage. So typically we're looking for like kind of $2,000 to $5,000 in monthly revenue. And our capital is structured so that we give it to you. It is not like a loan. It has no personal guarantees. And you pay us a percentage of your revenue until you're paid back plus 6%. So it's designed to be really affordable. Our early stage product, instead of giving up equity, you can give up a percentage of your revenue for a longer period of time for earlier. But yeah, I mean, if you're in kind of, you know, a couple $1,000s of revenue a month and you're online, I would love to talk to you. And I didn't know about the pet toys were not regulated. So it's a very cool business model.
So just to jump in, I think that Riti is actually not, unfortunately, on the call.
Oh, that's okay.
But you know what? We're going to get that answer to her because we're recording it. So we'll make sure that we get that to her so that she knows that we did.
To me directly and feel free.
Yeah.
You guys can talk to me if you're at Clearbanc stage, and I would be happy to introduce you to.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. Thank you.
People on our team. Sure.
I'm going to jump all the way back, and I have a question from Allie. Who is Allie here? Wave if you're here, Allie. Yes, no, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Oh, hi, Allie. Did I ask you a question already? I did not, right?
Allie, take yourself off mute.
I got.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, Allie, she runs Pure Balanced in Kingston. And it's a Canadian fashion brand where each design features a unique affirmation tag offering messages of love, support, and encouragement. In the next 6 months, she expects to see some funding challenges, again, because of the slowdown of in-person interaction. What is your recommendation for companies who find themselves in funding jams and then have to put a halt on some of their timelines? What would be your best recommendation for a smaller business like Allie's looking to get some quick capital?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is like understanding. Like, do you have an online component of your business, or is it all brick and mortar still?
Yep. So I'm actually primarily online. I'm through Shopify. So I'm almost about to hit year 2,
Yep.
but basically all online.
Yeah. So I think that that's like the first thing is it sounds like you're well positioned for that. I mean, it depends on your size. Clearbanc can be an option for you. I think getting your customers often to pre-buy products that you might want to release as like a small capsule or something, like pre-sales, can work when you're in a funding jam because you're using your customers' money to finance your growth. You know, banks can be difficult because it's often taking out leverage on your personal assets. And so I always get really scared of doing that. But those would be kind of the options that that I would look for in kind of this period of time.
Awesome. We're running out of time, so if you have any questions, send them over to Erin and we'll try to get to them.
Or send them in the chat. That's also fine too. And I'm happy to kind of run through a bunch really quickly.
Awesome. And the last question, actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And this is very much around, everyone talks about personal branding now, and it's so buzzwordy and kind of annoying to talk about. However, you know, I think, and you're the perfect example of this, is often your relationship with your personal brand and your relationship with your audience there differentiates from
Could I also ask, like, what?
I think we're just getting some delay there.
Oh,
Keep going.
okay, sorry about that. So my question then for you is, what are some tips? I think that's some delay, and I'm not sure.
Is everyone muted?
I'm not quite sure. I think we're getting delay from somewhere. My question was though, what are your recommendations, right? Because for example, your PPE crowd is going to be very different from your Clearbanc crowd. And I know with your personal brand, you want to be speaking to everyone. How do you do that? How do you navigate that?
I wouldn't overthink it. I mean, I think humans are like multi-dimensional, complex pieces, and it's your choice to share whatever you want to share on social media. I can tell you it's a super powerful tool when you can use it. And it's about being genuine, right? Like when I started doing the PPE thing, like I explained that it was like my partner that led a lot of that. And it was, you know, in response to a demand that we were seeing because we had our friends that were doctors call us and say they couldn't get access to, you know, basic PPE products. And I think like social media is all about being genuine, right? Like I really try and like, I mean, you can tell me if I'm failing or succeeding, but I just try and like, you know, not take myself too seriously, post things that are both a part of my life and also things that people have told me have been useful for them to hear. Video is still very powerful. It's a much more powerful medium of getting towards you. And I think we're all getting a little bit sick of like the constant airbrushed feeling of some of the social media platforms. And so, yeah, my biggest thing is like be yourself, like go back to that idea of like test and try different things. You know, oftentimes the most surprising things that I would feel are like out of character do the best on Instagram of anything else. And so, yeah, I mean, look, follow me and give me some feedback, and I would love to see what you guys are doing. But, you know, being very genuine is the best kind of advice I can give you, and remembering that like, you know, things feel like they're forever, but they're not forever. I mean, you don't like a post, you can take it down, right? Like don't do something truly stupid, but you gotta figure out a lot of stuff until you try. And, you know, even I say that, and I've done lots of things that are really stupid. So just part of, you know, putting yourself out there.
Makes you kind of relatable though, huh?
Totally. We don't get it right. And we're all learning in real time.
Michelle, I've got a question actually, if that's okay. I'm going to jump in.
Of course.
I was really taken by what you said earlier in the call about how COVID has shown us that there was a bunch of stuff that we weren't doing that we should have been doing all along.
Yeah.
And I was really taken by that because from an organizational perspective, certainly that's been our experience. We've had a lot of aha moments like, holy crap, we should have just been doing this from the beginning. And so I actually think we're a much stronger business now, 6 months later than we were 6 months ago. So I'm curious, like from your perspective, what's an example of something that you thought to yourself, wow, I should have been doing that all along?
I had always been a fan of like offices and collisions and meeting people in person. I was a huge non-believer in remote work. I think I've had to change my views on that pretty substantially. I still don't think it's my preferred thing. I think that like when you interact with people in person, like, I mean, you guys are getting a little bit of it here, but you're not really seeing me. Like I have glasses there. We have a delay in this phone line. Like you're not really feeling people's energy. And so I think that like I was a very slow adopter for that. You know, I had been just all sorts of like processes and like realizing you can probably work from anywhere and you'll be just fine. What else has COVID shaped? I think there's a lot of like life lessons around how little we need. You know what I mean? We kind of live in a very strong like consumption world. Like, I mean, you know, what the heck do I need 50 pairs of high heels for? Like, this just like absurd. Like, it's like, but you know, it's nothing like you can't wear anything for 6 months to realize how absurd your collection of nonsense is. Like,
That's
you kind of should laugh at yourself and like, Michelle, how many face masks do you need? Like, you can only wear one at a time, once a week. Like, it's just, it's and you got to be able to laugh at yourself a little bit, right? But I think those things around like just, you know, how deep our human experiences are with each other, how like little stuff we need, and how, you know, teams can be incredibly productive remotely. I think those were all big COVID realizations for me. And then also some other ones that were hard, like, you know, how much energy I get from people, right? I would do the same 12 hours of work I was doing every day, but I was finding it like less joyful because it was like, you know, in just a different form factor.
I totally agree. It's hard to feel motivated in the same way, right?
Oh, it's hard to feel motivated in the same way. And like you kind of shut your computer down and this just like abyss kind of starts to occur sometimes. Like, okay, what do I do? I think even in some ways I miss like the big fights. You know, you have like, even with your team, you kind of have like the brawl in the bar room, like, I don't like this. And you kind of like get it all out and then you can solve the problem. I feel like it's even harder to have a fight over video conference, right?
It's
like,
true.
No one's like really wants to like, no one wants to talk. You can't really read everyone's facial expressions the same way. Like there are some parts of that I'm still just struggling with. But I think overall our adoption of technology, our personal thing. I mean, one of the negative parts of COVID, I think, has been we've all spent too much time on the internet and we've gotten this rise of, I think, what's really negative cancel culture, where we look at people that have made one mistake on one thing and we say, you know, this is no longer a person like that should even have a job, is basically what people are saying now. And so I think we all have to be kinder, because you will not learn unless you stumble. Like you will not succeed unless you fail. Like that sounds like a freaking postcard, but it's actually not bullshit, right? It's actually the process of growth, is that, you know, stuff's not going to work along the way. And we just cannot be so cruel to people when, you know, it doesn't work the first time.
Totally. Do you have time for one more question? I think I'm going to pass it back to Nesh because I think she's going to get Rebecca to jump in here.
Yes. So Rebecca is the owner of B&K Boutique in Alberta. And it's a consignment and vintage clothing store that offers 50-50 profit for any commission made on consignment products.
That's very high for a consignment store.
Yeah, and she's very transparent about everything she does. She likes being what she calls a fair business, and it helps her build strong relationships.
Yeah.
Rebecca, if you want to step forth and ask your question, step forth.
I love it. What challenge did you face and overcome as a young entrepreneur while trying to establish your business from the beginning?
Oh man. I mean, I think I talked about some of this earlier. Like lots of people will not take you seriously. Lots of people will question you. And it is just like my job to like keep delivering and like keep blowing people's socks off. And like, I frankly, like, I've learned to like thrive off that feeling, right? I'm like, that person literally thinks I can do nothing. I was like, you just watch. And that's fun for me, right? I think you have to like see motivation in that versus seeing, you know, the downside. And then I think you have to have a really good support network of people that are, most importantly, other founders. Like, this is why I think groups like this are really important, because you can have your smart other friends with professional, you know, I don't know, the smart lawyer friends, the doctor friends, or the accounting friends, but like those people don't go through what founders go through. They don't go through like this intense amount of failure, this intense amount of high and lows. And so that's why it's really important like groups like this exist, because you can all kind of say like, look, you know, Rebecca succeeded. And I remember that time 2 months ago where she thought the whole business was going to fall apart. She had 3 days left. And we've all lived that so many times. And so I really try and like, even when I talk to people, like dispel that. Like, there has been so many days in my career that I just thought it was all over. I was going to lose everything. I wouldn't be able to pay anyone. Like, that is such a part of the experience. And so, yeah, there's lots of big challenges, but I think it's just having that support network to get through them and reminding yourself that that's a part of the journey, and getting a little motivated when people kind of don't take you seriously.
I love it.
Nesh, you're muted.
It's the
Yeah.
line of the year. You're
Thank you.
talking.
I know. I love it's the, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I know. Totally.
We can't hear you. Yeah. I'm going to throw it back to Lori. So that was all I was going to say anyway. Nothing of value. But Michelle, thank you. It's been so much fun talking with you. And Lori's
Was this helpful, guys?
Not at all.
Okay.
Just stayed in the pool.
Why don't people come off mute just for a minute? There you go. Lots of real world sounds.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
was this helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good.
I saw
Awesome.
tons of heads down and people taking notes, which I think is always a good sign.
That's great. Well, look,
Julie's showing us her
no.
notebook.
Yeah, look, I think that it's just about continuing to be like, look, I have this posted on my computer. It says a couple of things. It says, no to OPP, so no to other people's priorities. So I need to focus on what I need to do. And it says,
That's a good one.
4.5% better a week is 10 times better in a year. And it seems really, really hard to think about getting 10x better at anything until you remember that like every day you can take like a little bite off of that chunk. And that's been just a huge motivating success. Like for me, it's like I just have to think about like this week, this has to get 4% better. My team has to get 4% better. This product has to get 4% better. Like, and it's funny because like I think about even like exercise. It's like basically exactly like that. You kind of get like 2% better every time you go working out. And it's a frustrating journey, but it's the one that just like continually like, it's just like, okay, I just am like celebrating the little wins, and then eventually like something's got to give and you get a big win. But look, I know that these times are not easy. I can tell you that we'll look back on that and be like, wow, that was an incredible time to be building a business, and so many things shifted in the economy. But I'm giving you all the love and encouragement and support.
Aw, that's amazing. It's so kind of you to spend this time with us again on the first day of your vacation. And I'm glad we recorded it, because I feel like within this hour, there's so much actually to unpack, so much information, so many good ideas. I heard many, many things that I think are relevant for all of our clients, frankly, any business. You know, and I agree with you. I think that we're in a period of massive, massive disruption, obviously. And with that, historically, it comes real innovation and acceleration.
Totally.
And as an organization, you know, certainly Rise has been trying very hard to see the opportunity of the last 6 months and not just the peril And I agree with you completely that that's a fundamental mindset to have. I also feel like your personal brand, after listening to you tonight, I feel like your personal brand is like it's like the entrepreneur version of "Just Do It," the Nike tagline. You know, it's kind of like that's like, yeah.
The most important part of my success is like we just try really hard not to be scared and just say like,
yeah, totally.
People will say it if they like it or not.
I love it because, like, you know, one of my favorite sayings actually is it's good enough, you know, like it's good enough to get out the door. It's good enough to put out in the world because we have to move on. So 100%. I love that. Totally love that. Anyway, thank you so much. Nesh, you've done a brilliant job.
Yes, you're great.
And the only thing you've actually done, Nesh, is guarantee that we'll call on you again. So, you know, like, be ready for that. And
give yourself more work.
Honestly, I have the saddest social calendar you've ever seen. So
we all do. We all do.
And to all of our clients, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you found this helpful and interesting and inspiring. I feel inspired. And I'm very grateful for all of you tonight. Thank you so much. Michele in particular, thank you so, so much.
Thanks, Michele.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Clap for Michele.
Thank you.
Thank you.